The beeping was the only sound I remember. That and the cold. I don't know how long I was on the floor of the fellowship hall before anyone found me. I remember reaching for the table. I remember the edge of the tablecloth in my hand and then nothing. Just cold tile and the smell of old coffee and someone screaming my name. I'm 63 years old. I taught third grade for 31 years at the same elementary school 2 miles from the house where I raised my son. I've never missed a parent-teacher conference, never missed a mortgage payment, never once in my life called in sick when I wasn't. I say all of this not because I want you to think I'm impressive. I say it because I need you to understand the kind of woman I am before I tell you what happened, before I tell you what my son did, or rather, what he didn't do. The doctors told me later it was a massive heart attack, the widowmaker, they call it, the kind that kills most people before they ever reach the hospital. I was lucky, they said. The church custodian found me in time, a man named Theodore, who'd worked at that church for 22 years and who I'd probably said no more than 10 words to in all that time, rode with me in the ambulance and held my hand until the paramedics made him let go. I didn't know that then. I only found out later. What I knew, what I was told, when I finally opened my eyes 2 days after surgery, was that the hospital had tried to reach my son 61 times. 61. His name is listed as my emergency contact. Has been for 8 years, ever since my husband passed. He lives 40 minutes from that hospital. 40 minutes, and a good stretch of that is highway. 61 calls, 2 days, and he never picked up once. The nurse who told me was young, maybe 26, and she was very careful about how she said it. Very gentle, like she was delivering a different kind of bad news. She said they'd also tried the number I had listed for his wife. That line went straight to voicemail every time. I didn't cry. I remember thinking that was strange, that I should probably cry, but there was nothing there. Just a kind of stillness, like something in me had already known and had been waiting for the rest of me to catch up. His name is Brandon. He's 38 years old. He works in commercial real estate, does very well for himself, or so he tells me every time I see him. He and his wife Kelsey live in a new construction house in a suburb that didn't exist 15 years ago, with good schools and a neighborhood pool, and one of those signs out front with the family's last name on it. They have 2 boys, 7 and 9, my grandsons, Owen and Caleb. I love those boys more than I have words for. I stared at the ceiling tiles in that hospital room for a long time. My chest felt like someone had parked a truck on it. There were tubes, there was a window with afternoon light coming through it, and I thought about all the years. I thought about Brandon's childhood bedroom with the glow-in-the-dark stars I stuck to the ceiling one night after he fell asleep. I thought about his college application essays that I proofread until midnight. I thought about how I drove 6 hours to his city when Kelsey had Owen, and how I slept on their couch for 2 weeks and did every load of laundry and every dish in that house without being asked. I thought about his voice on the phone 3 weeks before I collapsed, bright and easy, telling me he and Kelsey were taking the boys to Cabo for spring break. "You'd love it there, Mom," he'd said. And I'd said, "Have a wonderful time, sweetheart." Spring break. I asked the nurse what the date was. She told me. I did the math. He'd been in Cabo. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Maybe he didn't have service. Maybe the resort had bad reception. Maybe he didn't know. I thought all of those things too, lying in that hospital bed with the truck still parked on my chest. I gave him every excuse I could think of because that's what mothers do. Then on the third day, my neighbor Paulette came to visit. Paulette has lived across the street from me for 19 years. She's 71, sharp as a tack, and she does not have a patient bone in her body when it comes to nonsense. She brought me a container of her chicken soup and a magazine, and she sat down in the chair next to my bed, and she looked at me the way she looks at her grandkids when they've tried to get away with something. "He knows," she said. I said, "What?" She pulled out her phone. She'd found a photo on social media, Kelsey's account, which is public, posted 2 days after I'd been admitted, a picture of the four of them on a beach. Blue water, white sand, the boys in matching swim trunks, grinning so big you could count their teeth, and Brandon there beside them, sunburned and smiling, holding a drink with a little paper umbrella in it. The caption said, "Family time. Sun, sand, and zero stress. Needed this more than I knew. Zero stress." Paulette watched my face while I looked at that photo. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. I handed her phone back. I looked out the window for a while. Then I said, "Thank you for coming, Paulette." She squeezed my hand and told me to eat the soup. I didn't call Brandon. I didn't text him. I didn't send a message through Kelsey or through anyone. I just didn't. Every time I thought about picking up that phone, I felt something in me go very quiet and very still, and I'd put the phone back down. I wasn't making a decision exactly. It was more like the decision had already been made somewhere deeper than my thinking mind, and my thinking mind just hadn't caught up yet. My cardiologist was a woman named Dr. Osei. She was calm and precise, and she told me the truth without softening it, which I appreciated. She said the damage to my heart was significant. She said I would need cardiac rehab. She said I would need someone with me at home for the first several weeks after discharge. "Is there family nearby?" she asked. I thought about Brandon's smile in that beach photo, that relaxed, everything is fine smile. "I'll make arrangements," I said. The arrangements I made were with Paulette, who insisted, and with a woman named Gloria, who had been a home health aide for 20 years and who came to me through a service my insurance covered. Gloria was 54, and she had a laugh you could hear from 2 rooms away, and she made sure I took every pill at exactly the right time. I liked her immediately. I also made an appointment with my attorney. Not because I was angry, I told myself, because I was 63 years old, and I'd just had a widowmaker heart attack, and I had not updated my estate documents since my husband died, and that was irresponsible regardless of anything else. I sat across from my attorney in his office on a Tuesday, and I told him what I wanted to do, and he listened without reacting, the way good attorneys do. "You've thought about this carefully?" he asked. "I have," I said. "I owned my house, outright paid off the mortgage the year before I retired. I had a retirement account and a savings account that together came to just over $94,000. I had a small life insurance policy. I had my late husband's pension benefits. None of it was a fortune, but it was a life's worth of careful, and it was mine." I told my attorney what I wanted to do with it. He nodded. He wrote it down. He didn't flinch. Brandon called me 11 days after I was discharged from the hospital. I was sitting on my back porch drinking decaf. The real stuff was off limits now. Doctor's orders, watching a cardinal at the bird feeder my husband had put up 15 years ago, and that I'd never once thought to take down. My phone rang. I looked at his name on the screen for a long moment. I answered, "Mom." His voice was warm, full, easy, like nothing. "Hey, sorry I've been out of touch. The trip was crazy, and then we had that whole thing with Owen's soccer schedule, and you know how it is. How are you? How've you been?" Have you been? I sat with that for a second. I had a heart attack, I said. While you were in Cabo, I was in the hospital for 12 days. Silence. And then, what? Mom, what? What happened? Are you, are you okay? Why didn't anyone call me? They called you 61 times, I said. The hospital, your emergency contact is their job, and they did it. 61 times, Brandon. More silence. Longer now. I didn't, Mom. I didn't have great service down there. The resort was kind of in a dead zone. Kelsey posted a photo, I said, from the beach 2 days after I was admitted. I didn't say it with heat. I was surprised, actually, by how level my voice was, like I was telling him about something I'd read in the newspaper. You were holding a drink. You looked happy. I'm glad you had a good trip. He started talking then, fast, overlapping himself, apologizing and explaining, and then apologizing again. I let him go for a while. Then I said, I'm all right. I'm home now. I have help. You don't need to worry. Mom, I'm coming down there this weekend. I need to see you. You don't have to do that. No, I want to, Mom. I'm so sorry. Brandon, I kept my voice gentle. I meant that. I was not performing gentleness. Somewhere in those 12 days in the hospital, some hot wire in me had just gone cool. Not cold. Cool. I'll talk to you soon. Give the boys my love. And I hung up. He showed up anyway that Saturday. Of course he did. Alone Kelsey had some commitment, he said. He stood in my kitchen looking like a boy who'd broken something and was trying to figure out how to hide the pieces, and he hugged me too carefully, like he was afraid I'd break. You look good, he said. You look, I mean, you look like yourself. Cardiac rehab is 3 times a week, I said. Gloria drives me. Gloria? My home health aide. Something moved across his face, discomfort maybe, or embarrassment. He said, Mom, you should have called me. I could have helped with that. I could have helped. I handled it, I said. He stayed for 3 hours. He fixed a gutter that had been loose since winter, which I hadn't asked him to do but didn't stop him. He ate the lunch I made him. I was already back to cooking, carefully, and he talked about the boys and about a deal he was working on and about Kelsey's new thing with Pilates. I listened. I asked questions. I was, I believe, a perfectly pleasant and engaged mother. Before he left, he hugged me again. He said, I love you, Mom. I'm sorry. Really. I know, I said. And I watched his truck back out of my driveway, and I went inside and finished my decaf and watched the Cardinal come back to the feeder. What I didn't tell Brandon, what I wasn't ready to tell anyone yet except my attorney and Paulette, who had been there for everything and who I trusted with my whole heart, was what had happened in the days right after I got home. The Thursday after I was discharged, I was sitting in my living room doing the gentle breathing exercises Dr. Osi had prescribed when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Gloria had already come and gone for the day. I moved slowly to the door, still moving slowly then, still careful, and I opened it to find a young woman I half recognized standing on my porch. Her name was Ingrid. She was 31, a former student of mine, though she'd been 7 years old the last time I'd seen her in my classroom. She lived 3 blocks away now, had moved back to town after a divorce, she told me, was renting the yellow house on Sycamore with her daughter. She'd heard through the neighborhood grapevine about my heart attack. She wanted to know if she could help. I almost said no. I'm not good at accepting help from people. Never have been. But something about the way she stood there, not pushy, not performing concern, just genuinely asking, made me say, instead, would you like to come in? We talked for 2 hours. She'd remembered me, really remembered me, specific things. Things I'd long forgotten. A book I'd read aloud in class, something I'd said to her when she was struggling with reading and feeling embarrassed about it. She'd kept a card I'd given her when she moved up to fourth grade. She still had it. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo of it. I'm not ashamed to say I cried a little. My chest still hurt, and I was tired, and I was 63 years old, and a former student I barely remembered had driven 3 blocks to check on me and still had a card I'd written 24 years ago. Ingrid started coming by twice a week. She'd bring her daughter, a 4-year-old named Rosie, who immediately decided that my bird feeder was the most extraordinary thing she had ever seen in her life. Ingrid would sit with me while I did my breathing exercises, and we'd talk, and she'd help me with things I couldn't quite manage, yet reaching the high shelves, carrying the laundry basket. She didn't make a production of it. She just helped. By the time Brandon made his Saturday visit, Ingrid had been coming by for 3 weeks. I hadn't mentioned her to him. I hadn't mentioned a lot of things. 2 months after I was discharged, I was cleared for more activity. My heart was healing. My energy was coming back. I started driving myself again. Short trips at first, then longer ones. I went back to volunteering at the school literacy program just 2 mornings a week because that work had always steadied me and I needed steadiness. I also finished the work with my attorney. The documents were signed and notarized on a Wednesday afternoon in April. My attorney walked me through everything one final time. I listened carefully. I had no uncertainty about any of it. The house and the bulk of my savings would go to a revocable trust that would fund two things: a college scholarship for students from my old school district, first generation college students specifically, kids like some of the ones I'd taught, and, should she need it, support for Ingrid and Rosie. Brandon would receive the contents of a savings account I'd set aside for him, which totaled $4,200, and a letter. I wrote that letter myself, 4 drafts over 3 weeks. And I want to be clear about something. It was not an angry letter. I did not write it in a moment of bitterness or heat. I wrote it the way I hope someone will write about me someday, with honesty and with love, and without pretending that love means the same thing as having no memory. I told him that I loved him. I told him that I was proud of the man he had become in many ways. I told him that I understood that people are complicated and that I was not, at 63, naive enough to think that family means perfect. But I also told him the truth, that while I was on a cold tile floor in the fellowship hall of my church, the man I had raised was on a beach with a drink in his hand and 61 unanswered calls on his phone, that I had lain in a hospital bed for 12 days and had not once seen his face, that I had come home to my own house and arranged my own care and had not asked him for a single thing, not because I was angry, but because I had finally understood something I should have understood a long time ago: that you do not beg someone to love you the way you need to be loved. You just stop waiting. I told him that the money wasn't a punishment. I told him I hoped he and Kelsey and the boys had a wonderful life, and I meant it. I told him I would always be his mother and that I hoped he'd let me know the boys as they grew up. I sealed the envelope and gave it to my attorney to be delivered at the appropriate time. I'm telling you this now because I'm okay. I want you to know that first. My last cardiology appointment was 8 weeks ago, and Dr. Osei looked at my numbers and smiled for the first time in a way that wasn't just professional reassurance. "You're doing remarkably well," she said. I thanked her. I meant it. Spring has come in properly now. The cardinal is at the feeder every morning, and Rosie has named him Gerald. She announced this very seriously one Tuesday morning, hands on her little hips, watching him from my back porch. "That's Gerald," she said. I told her that was an excellent name for a cardinal. Ingrid has become something I don't have a clean word for. Not a daughter, I wouldn't presume, but something in that neighborhood, someone who shows up, someone whose number I would put in the emergency contact line now without a second thought. Brandon calls once a week, regular as a clock, since the hospital. We have conversations that are careful and real and slowly getting less careful. I don't know what our future looks like. I'm not wise enough to promise anyone anything about what happens in families over time. What I know is that I am not sitting here waiting for something to be different. I am living my life, my actual life, the one that is happening right now, with the cardinal at the feeder, and Rosie's made up names for things, and Paulette's chicken soup, and 3 mornings a week in a gym, learning to make my rebuilt heart strong. I kept the $94,000. I decided what it would do in the world. And I stopped apologizing for being the kind of woman who, once she has been shown exactly who someone is in the hardest moment of her life, believes them. I believe in second chances. I believe in grace. I believe in the kind of love that survives hard things and comes out the other side changed but still standing. I also believe that some lessons arrive on a cold tile floor in a church fellowship hall, and that the only thing left to do after that is get up slowly and choose differently. That's what I did. I keep thinking about Theodore, the church custodian who rode with me in the ambulance and held my hand until they made him let go. I didn't even know his last name. I'd walked past him hundreds of times over the years, nodded, maybe said good morning, and when the worst moment of my life came, he was the one who stayed. There's something in that I couldn't shake, even after I got home, even after the tubes were out and the prescriptions were filled and Gloria was making sure I took every pill at the right time. The people who showed up weren't the ones who were supposed to, and the one who was supposed to, the one whose name I'd written on that emergency contact form in my own handwriting, was holding a drink on a beach with a paper umbrella in it. I don't think Brandon is a bad person. I've sat with that long enough to believe it, but I think he made choices, small ones over a long time, that added up to something I couldn't pretend away anymore. The choice to silence his phone, the choice to not check, the choice to post that caption, zero stress, while his mother was somewhere between here and not here. None of those were accidents. They were just who he'd quietly become, and I'd been too busy loving him to see it clearly. What this whole thing taught me, and I mean cracked open and taught me the hard way, is that love without honesty is just a comfortable lie you tell yourself to avoid a painful truth. I loved my son so much that I stopped being honest about what I was actually receiving in return. That's not wisdom. That's not even kindness, really. It's just fear dressed up as devotion. Ingrid didn't owe me anything. She was 7 years old the last time I saw her in my classroom. She came to my door because she heard a neighbor was sick and she thought she might be able to help. That's it. No obligation, no history of owing, just a choice she made because it was the right thing to do. And then she kept making that choice, twice a week, for months. That kind of character doesn't happen by accident. It's built, quietly, out of small decisions that nobody's watching. That's what I want people to take from this if they take anything. Not revenge, not bitterness. Those things are heavy and they slow you down and they keep you living inside the worst moment instead of past it. What I want people to see is this: the way you treat someone when it costs you something, when it's inconvenient, when no one's looking, when there's no reward coming. That's the truest thing about you. I had to nearly die to understand that the life I was building needed to reflect that truth. My will, my savings, my house, those aren't just legal documents. They're a record of what I actually believed about who deserved to inherit something from my time here. I made them honest. And I got up from that cold tile floor, slowly, and I chose differently. That's all any of us can do.